family. Fridge is right there, sodas are in it, water's over here, cups are on top, the food's on the counter. Have a good time with it. I used to try to serve everyone, but that's intercession. Those are snacks. If I try to serve everyone, we never pray. So then he hurried, he did all that, he brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared, and he set all these before them. So once he asked them if they were hungry and they wanted to eat, probably took them a couple hours before they ever got any food. What do you think they did in that time? Fellowship. That's that right hand of fellowship. That's that making tabernacle with someone. That's that thing where you allow someone into your heart and you will go into theirs. That's that thing that sharpens one man. Iron sharpens iron. This is where they brought the news. This is where they told what God was doing. This is where they magnified God or man, whichever it was. In this instance, we probably know. But what about the new Christians? Because and the church leaders today. Because the code of hospitality, things change. For example, we aren't obligated to do physical circumcision on day 8. But we are required to do spiritual circumcision, right? So a lot of the laws have changed. So what about the code of hospitality? Is it fulfilled in the spiritual realm? Do we still have the code of hospitality? But remember what I told you, it really wasn't a law, it was a code of ethics. And it is required for church leaders. 1 Timothy 3:2. So when you were in Philippians, you still go over to the right and all the T's are together. Now the overseer, who's the overseer? Is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife or husband, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable. Hospitable. A lot of pastors today have missed this term right here. They don't have people to their home because they're the pastors. They expect the church to do it. They don't, and it's one of the things I think that we have, as pastors, exalted ourselves above the people. And we are supposed to be the platform for people. Since hospitality is an attitude of God, or an attribute of God, we find its images in the biblical proclamations of the relationship between God and his people. In the early church, hospitality was an important expression of loving kindness, one that received support in the teaching of Jesus. So we're going to look at Matthew 25, verse 37. Then the righteous will answer him. Matthew 25:37. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did you see a stranger and when did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothing and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison or go to visit you? And the king will reply. The king will reply. Truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Could the code of hospitality be any clearer than it is in this passage? From all the things I've talked about now with the code of hospitality, could it be any clearer?
No. It's there. It's already commanded.
He even reminds them, remember, the code of hospitality includes clothing if they needed it, food, protection, shelter, help. How about the parable of the Good Samaritan? That's the code of hospitality with a whole different twist to it. Because your neighbor is this man wounded on the street. He's not just somebody that came to you or came in your home. So the code of hospitality has on several aspects or forms. Number one, it's a humble and gracious reception of travelers into your home for food, lodging, and protection. That's the basics. Number two, permitting the foreigner to harvest the corners of your field. Remember we talked about Boaz, and he was wealthy and he was a Jew. So he did not allow a strip along the edge of his land or the corners to be harvested, so that the people who were poor, the sojourners, because remember the travelers, the people who were traveling, were not brought into community by very many people. But the Jews did, and that was one of the ways they fed them as they traveled through. It wasn't like they were stopping at McDonald's. You know, there was no Diet Coke. Clothing to the naked. Tithing food for the needy, including aliens in religious celebrations. So you know, the Jews were very, when they did their celebrations and their feasts and stuff, they didn't invite outsiders in. If you've ever been invited for Passover in a home, you're blessed. Because it wasn't something that was the norm. But it became part of this code of hospitality, was they shared. This is us sharing our food. It's interesting to note that just like today, food was very, very important. The hospitable act of the communal meal had huge symbolic significance. In the Old Testament times, to share a meal with someone was to share life. People were walking around. If we didn't have the code of hospitality, people could easily starve to death when they walked around, because your food's going to spoil. You're out in the heat. So you can't carry enough for an entire trip. You need people who will be hospitable to you. It was a gesture of intimacy, and it created a bond of fellowship. There's all kinds of examples. God's meal with the elders of Israel. That's in Exodus 24. So all these examples I'm giving you, they'll be down in the bones. Okay? Jesus' meal with the sinners and the tax collectors. The Lord's Supper. Jesus' post-resurrection meals. Peter eating with the Gentiles. And the common or shared meals. You know, in Acts it talks about how the Christians came together and broke bread together and fellowship together. In the Old Testament, God was the host. This was the part where I was talking about last week that was going to need expansion. In the Old Testament, God was the host. Israel was the guest. Okay? The Israelites were an alienated people, completely dependent upon God's hospitality for life. In Psalms 39:12, hear my prayer, Lord. Listen to my cry for help. Do not be deaf to my weeping. I dwell with you as a foreigner, a stranger, as all my ancestors were. We are foreigners in a strange land. The Jews did not belong. We don't belong. God was the host. Israel was the guest. The code of hospitality took care of his people. You know that Hebrews 11 is the, faith powerhouses that people teach about, right? But in there, we're also reminded, it's in Hebrews 11:13. All of these people, and you guys do know that, so it talks about all these people of faith, and it says, but they didn't get what they were looking for. They didn't get what they were looking for. They didn't get what they were looking for. And a lot of times the way that is taught is, this is just a side note, a lot of times the way that is taught is, see, God didn't let them have it. What makes you think you're going to get your answer to prayer? Well, they did. If you look, Sarah was promised a baby. She got a baby. I don't remember what they all are, but they all actually received the things that, the thing they didn't receive was the Messiah. That's the thing they were looking for that they didn't get. Just like has God come back yet? Nope. Eastern sky hasn't split. We're still here. Are we still looking for it? But is he answering our prayers anyway? Yeah. See? Same thing. So Hebrews 11:13, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. They saw the Messiah. They saw the need for the Messiah where they were. They understood that this is coming. This is coming. They saw it at a distance. Admitting that they were foreigners and strangers here on earth. Abraham, this wealthy man that did all these marvelous things, a foreigner, stranger, didn't belong. Moses, foreigner, stranger, didn't belong. David, foreigner, stranger, didn't belong. We are presented with a gracious God who receives alienated Israelites, meets their needs, redeeming them from Egypt, while feeding and clothing them in the wilderness. And he brought them brought them into God's own home, or in this case, his own land that he gave them. And he offered them health, protection, long life, and peace. Symbolic table fellowship is offered during meals of peace offerings. All of their festivals, they have 12, all of them include a meal. There's something about food in every one of them. And this is God's table, of offering table with him. God was the host, providing food and clothing for all. David sings the praises of God for this very thing in Psalms 104.